Hey everyone, and welcome back to Future Focus. Today we're going to be building this sleek, responsive carousel component using React, Tailwind, and Frame in Motion. It's quite simple to create, and I'll guide you through each step. So we'll cover everything from setting up the project to adding the little animations. By the end of the tutorial, you have a stunning carousel for your website. So let's dive in. So first we're going to set up the React app. In my case, I'm using Next.js. And then we're going to import some images, which we're going to use for our carousel component. As you can see, I'm just importing the first image here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to import the rest and create an array of images, which is what we're going to map over. As you can see, it's image 1, image 2, image 3. And that's the array that we're going to map over. So first, now let's style our outer div, the outer container. I'm just going to add some padding on the top and the bottom on the y-axis and padding on the x-axis. I'm just going to add a h1. Just going to give it some classes as well. Just going to make it 3XL. Font size medium. And I give it a width of 65%, so it just doesn't cover the whole screen, as you can see here. Cool. Now let's create the div that contains the actual carousel. So we'll give this a class name of relative and flex box as well, and flex of column. So everything sits on top of each other. We'll give item center to center the things horizontally. We'll give it padding on the y-axis of 20. Next we'll create another div which will contain the images, the actual slider component. So for this, we'll give it an overflow of hidden, just to make sure that there's no horizontal scroll, sorry. And we'll give it a width of 90 rem on the height and on the width, sorry, and 20 rem on the height. Next, what we need to do is we need to create a state that's going to keep track of which item is currently active. So we'll call it current index and set current index. We'll just give that an initial state of 0. Now what we need to do is we need to create the function that will take us from the first slide to the second slide, and etc. will basically run us through the slides. So for that we're going to create a function which says set current index, and we're going to use the previous state as the initial, and then we're going to say if the previous state is equal to 0, then go to the previous item by clicking this function. As you can see here. As you can see, if the previous slide is equal to 0, so it receives the previous slide as the argument, and then here we'll check if the conditional operator is if previous is current index is equal to 0. So if previous is 0, that means the current slide is the first slide in the carousel. And if previous is 0, the ternary operator returns images.length minus 1, which will set the current index to the last image in the images array, effectively looping back to the last slide. So now we'll create the next one that takes it forward. So we'll take you to the next slide. So here all we're going to do is same function, but we're going to check if the previous is equal to images.length minus 1. And if it is, then it means the current slide is the last slide in the carousel. So now let's create the motion div, which contains the images. So we've just installed Frame in Motion. And we've just imported the motion component from there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to map through the images. And for each image we need an image and an index. And here we need another motion div. For this we're going to give it some classes, so we'll give it some padding. Yep, and give it a minimum height of 30 and a height of 20. A width of 30 and a height of 20, sorry. And here we're just going to use an image tag to display each image. As you can see, the images are now being displayed. And we'll just give this the width 4 and height of 4 to make sure that it fills up the component that we've created above. We'll give an object cover to make sure that the image fits perfectly, and we'll round it as well nicely. Perfect. Now we want to create the container for the buttons. So we'll just give this some classes now. So we'll give it a flex, and a flex of row, and then we'll give it a justify between to make sure everything is spaced out evenly. Make sure we give it a width of full as well. As you can see here, justify between, and we'll give it a margin top of 6. And we want to create the buttons. For this, we've got some icons that we've installed using React icons. Let's give it a background of grey. Padding of 5. Padding of 3, sorry. Give it rounded full. Give it a nice shadow as well. We'll just add a little transition for the hover effect. We'll just give an opacity of 70 on hover. Change this to the left arrow now. Right arrow, sorry. Cool. Now what we need to do is we need to create the little images, the dots in the middle that will just tell us which image is currently active. So we'll just do another images.map. And then we'll just add the BS dot in here, which is another icon that we've selected from React icons. What this does now is we need to we'll give an underscore because we don't actually need to do anything with the first place, and we'll just give it a key of index. So we'll just use underscore as a placeholder because we don't actually need to add anything other than the index. And here we'll just do a conditional styling, which says, obviously first we'll add the cursor pointer. And now we're going to do some conditional styling, which says if the index is equal to current index, which basically means if the item is currently selected, we'll give it a color of 800 grey. And if not, we're going to give it a text color of 400. With React icons, you can simply use text color when using Tailwind CSS. So if it's active, we'll give it a grey 800, and if not, we'll give it a grey of 400. Yep, as you can see. So as you can see here, the first one's been selected, therefore the first one's active. But the dots are quite separate, so what we're going to do is we're going to create, we're going to wrap these dots in a div. I'm going to give this a flex row rather than flex column to sit them side by side. And then we're going to give them a little gap of 1, perfect, as you can see. Now we just need to add the functions to each arrow. Just add an on-click function. So we get the previous slide function. And then we'll add the next slide function to this one. Yep, so now we just need to use frame of motion to make this animation work. So we're going to add an initial to the outer div, we're going to add an initial state, make x 0, x equal to 0, and then we're going to create an animate which says x minus current index times 320. So this animates the component's horizontal position based on the current index state. It moves the component along the x-axis to the left by 320 pixels multiplied by the current index, which effectively shifts the component to display the corresponding slide in the carousel. That's meant to be animate, sorry, not transition. So for example, if current index is 1, the component will move by minus 320 pixels. If current index is 2, it will move by minus 640, and so on and so forth. And now we're just going to add some transition properties just to make the transition look nice and smooth. So we're going to use the type spring, followed by stiffness, give that 300, then we'll give it a damping of 30, which as you'll be able to see will just give the animation a nice scroll effect, as you can see, beautiful. So last thing, we just need to make sure the dots can be clicked to select and change the slide. So for that we simply just have to give an on-click function and give it a set current index and set it to index, which we drag from the map function. So yeah, as you can see now, every time we click, take us to the index. There you have it. Simple, beautiful slider carousel component, which, yep, you can add to your project very simply. One last thing is we just need to add the overflow hidden to just get rid of that horizontal scroll bar at the bottom. As you can see, we save that. Perfect, it's gone. There you have it, the carousel component. You guys see you on the next one.